Good day. Good day to one and all present here. Am I audible? I am Dr. M. Anita Indu, Head of the Department from Computer Applications Department. Distinguished delegates, staff members from various colleges, both national and international, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to extend to you all a very warm welcome on behalf of Department of Computer Applications, Sri Shankarlal Sundarbai Shashun Jain College for Women for this virtual FDP. Needless to say, we are grateful to Mr. R. Rupesh Kumar, Principal Consultant, Infosys, Japan, who has accepted our invitation to convene this international faculty developed program on AI-based proctoring in next generation education. Mr. Rupesh Kumar is a senior IT manager based in Japan. He is a computer engineer who has 25 plus years of experience in various industries such as retail, manufacturing, utilities, and construction. He has worked in various positions from software engineer to IT consultant to senior engagement manager. He had graduated from Madras University with bachelor's in computer science and engineering and had done his master's in e-business at the Australian University of Southern Queensland. He loves being outdoor hiking and enjoys playing tennis, table tennis, and soccer. We extend a hearty welcome to you, sir. This COVID time actually is an opportunity to all of us to renew our contacts and discuss topics which is the need of the hour. In concluding, I wish all every success in all our deliberations and wish you all an informative session. Now, I will hand over the session to Mr. Rupesh Kumar.
Thank you, Dr. Anita Indu, for that lovely introduction. And first of all, let me convey my thanks to SSS Sashun Jain College for cordially inviting me to present this session on AI-based proctoring in next generation education. And I welcome you all, and I thank you for joining this session, live session, on the topic. So let me switch on to the presentation and then talk about it. Thank you. AI-based proctoring in next generation education. Now, I would initially talk about where we stand as a traditional education and then move on to how education itself has changed in the last few decades and the current status and what we can expect in the future and how proctoring plays a key role in handling this. There is issues and challenges which are involved in the process. I'll talk a little bit about that. So traditional learning, like we all know, typically involves a teacher. We have a brick and mortar facility, usually a school, and then a group of students who gather together in the facility during a specific time or periods of the day and then learn with the teachers. So here, the main focus is on the teacher running the show, identifying the material to teach, and then interacting with the students, either in a group or single, depending on what kind of course it is. And then ensuring that students understand the basics of the class. So most of the world still follows this method of learning. But in the last couple of decades, we have seen with the increase or betterment of the technology that traditional learning is slowly moved on to blended learning. So here, blended learning is the integrated approach to learning and teaching that combines several modes of instruction and the practice of learning. But still, the core here is face-to-face teaching or training. So that being the core, the other modes of learning or teaching, which is enabled by the technology, is put together and it is used as a tool to teach the members. So the key advantages of the blended learning is having the flexibility. It provides the efficiency compared to traditional learning. That's because apart from face-to-face teaching, the students will be able to access their material online anytime they want and from any location. And this also provides an extended reach than the traditional way of teaching. And these tools also enable personalization. So one could have, say, a box where you can put in your courses or the material that you like, and you can access that particular site whenever you want to be able to see what is your interests are and how to take that forward. But the key challenges there with the blended learning has still been that it's been hard for people to buy into that, where we switch from face-to-face training being the core, or using the technology only as a supplementary way of dealing. So that has been the challenge, which did not allow people to move, or the educational institutions to move from the concept of having to have a face-to-face training session at all. So that traditional mindset has been the challenge and still challenged in several parts of the world. And then another challenge is the traditional way of the role and responsibility of a teacher and a student. That changes completely. So that both teachers and the students should be able to get used to this new definition for their roles and their responsibilities. So that hasn't happened. That's also related to the mindset. So that hasn't happened much. And finally, the challenge there is being clear about what to teach, how to teach, because it goes beyond just defined hours of teaching. So the material that needs to be available offline. So there's a lot of work involved in presenting this material to the students. So that has been, even though blended learning has picked up pace in the last, say, a decade and a half, about 15 years, but still these have been the major challenges. But what we see recently with the development of technology is that we are moving away from the idea of face-to-face teaching being the center of the teaching spectrum to driving the whole thing online. And this has been enabled mainly because of the development in technology and also because of the environment itself. The mindset of the people changing in the last 5-6 years, particularly in the developed countries, where there's a lot of promotion towards switch to online learning. And if you look at the next generation education, you can broadly categorize into 6 different buckets. They are virtual learning, e-learning. I'll go through this one by one. So e-learning, personalized learning, and then we have game-based education, Another one which is picking up pace is holographic teaching, and as you might all know, AI-enabled learning. So virtual learning, what is virtual learning? This is basically a distance learning, which is conducted using a virtual environment where members need not, or students need not meet up with the teacher face to face, and they can use this virtual environment to be able to study by themselves. So it's a self-paced learning, asynchronous one. And sometimes it is also mixed with live web conferences or live teaching time and again. But primarily, the idea here is you're moving away from face-to-face teaching in a brick and mortar setting. And then you focus on learning at your own pace. So that is the key part of virtual learning, which is also called as web-based learning or online learning. So this, what this enables is to be able to remotely access educational services from any location at any time. And it also enables an individualized learning process. So there we take into considerations once, or the educational institutions or teachers can take into consideration one's personal level of competence, the individual needs of the students, and everybody has a different style of learning. So that could also feed into the system for creating the course which is tailored to a particular student. And another key benefit of this is cost effectiveness, and we do that when compared to the traditional teaching. So we see several virtual platforms which have come into existence, like as you can say, Udemy, Teachables, Thinkific, LearnDash, and so on and so forth. Yes, I've just picked up a few virtual learning platforms, but there are several more which is coming up. And then in similar line to virtual learning is, which I'm sure you would all heard about e-learning. So e-learning is similar to the virtual learning where we use the virtual environment, but the difference, the main difference here is that it's an online class which is conducted, and we have a framework where teaching is done online, and we have all the materials which is available online, and even tests do happen online, or it could be even in a brick and mortar society or setting based on the location because of the security reasons which have come into play. But that's improving now. So that is the major difference when you compare e-learning and virtual learning. And it enables you to access, or students to access the course materials as long as one has the internet connection. So the benefits of this is the integration. So right now we have e-learning platforms where everything is integrated as platform. And right now we also have platform as a service, which enables the institutions to choose exactly what part of the package or the platform alone they want to use depending on the needs. So the integration of enrollments, forums, schedules, each individual students can create their own schedules, and we have personalization included in the platform. So another key benefit of this is the grading system. One can also track online about the progress, the reports, the grades, and the contents are all in the cloud, so one can access the contents anytime, anywhere, and it reduces the cost for the institutions too, simply because it's maintained in a central location. cloud, so they don't have to set up the hardware or the server for doing any of that. And it is also provided as a service. And as a teaching mechanism, we also have gamification, which is used as a part of helping the students to get involved in learning. And the e-learning platforms, again, there is a huge overlap between e-learning and virtual learning platforms. But how it is used is what makes the difference between these two. So it's, as you can see, Udemy, Teachable, Vizzes, and Rezuka, edX, and so on and so forth. And this is the key benefit. The third one, called the personalized learning, is the key benefit of the new generation education. Here, we have the teaching or the study materials tailored to each and every student. Because as educators, I think you all know and people have known that no two members do study the same way. But due to the environment and the ease of doing in a particular way, till this point, the brick and mortar or traditional way of learning has emphasized the part that all students need to study in the same way. But that is changing at this point. And the personalized learning is enabled mainly by the four aspects of learning. So, which is developing a culture where a learner is more valued than a student. So that's the learning culture, which forms one of the key avenues. And then enabling flexible learning through flexible learning environment, and getting into deeper learning, that is making the learners be responsible for their own learning. So no more does the teacher alone have the responsibility, it's a joint ownership. And the student by themselves do take the responsibility for the learning. And it comes by building relationship and partnership with the advocates and the teachers. So we will get into this a little bit in detail. The learning culture that we talk about consists of three main points. One is everyone who participates in the activity, learning activity, which is the learner, the advisor, the teacher, and support systems, what might be available, they should have the same belief system. And here, the whole thing would be competency-based learning. So what that means is each and every student have their own competencies. So identification of what one is good at and what one might not be so good at, and then creating a plan to teach the student based on the competency. So you can have a third grader and a fourth grader put together for a math class depending on their level. So the differentiation doesn't happen anymore based on age, because learning is a lifelong process. And based on competencies, what needs to be nurtured, what needs to be developed, the focus is set on that. And the learning happens that way. And finally, among the learning culture is need to be a self-sustainable system. So you have your support system based on your teachers, learners, and coaches, and they motivate, they support a particular individual in going ahead with the program that has been created. Then moving on to learning environments, it made it, there are flexible learning spaces, and we now are focused more on teaching students of multiple ages the same class. This happens when we become an adult and we still learn. That differentiation is not there. But when we look at the classes, when we look at the time, when we learn from the 4th grade to the 12th grade, this system is not considered as a key system to this point. So that's changing. And in a flexible learning spaces, this is followed a lot more in the work environment right now, more than the educational institutions. You have separate spaces where you nurture a particular talent. Like you might have a space within a school, where discussions happen and ideas are generated. And based on the idea which is generated, you go to the discovery zone, do trial and error, and see if that comes into play, what shape that it takes. And in order to get the feedback and motivate whatever one has developed through their learning, that is displayed in the show of zone, and feedbacks are provided, and similar kind of repetition happens. So by creating spaces and having students of different background, age, ethnicity mix and generate an idea together and work as a group, this enables each other, each and every student to support one another and create a system where learning happens as a group and innovation takes shape. Then when you talk about deep learning, apart from the initial basic knowledge that one gets, there is also a lot of learning which happens based on inquiry. So students are to be encouraged, their students are encouraged to ask questions and go and research for themselves. In the right now you have Google's, you have Apple, you have Siri, and you have systems which help the students, which guide students to find answers by themselves. So that inquiry-based knowledge generation is another way to promote deeper learning and build interest among the students. And this deeper learning is a lot more focused now in several places where nurturing is being promoted. And the same with play-based learning, and play-based is basically game-based learning where education and game are tailored together using gamification. And as we all know, kids love to play game and even adults love to play game. So using games or creating games which incorporates the basics of science, basis of math, and encouraging kids or young adults or even adults to go and play and understand how the system works. And assessment as learning this is being followed in the manufacturing or the work industry for a long time, what we call as plan, do, act, plan, do, check and act, PDCA cycle, where initially planning is done and then action is taken, and then check happens on what action is taken, and then it's repeated. So now when we bring that into the educational field, it's about tailoring it more to the student, understanding, creating a plan based on the strengths and weaknesses of the students, and nurturing the weaknesses and promoting the strengths, and providing a feedback cycle. So while doing all this, as an operation, teachers and learners, they need to form a partnership. So it's about a buddy system where teacher helps the student go in the right direction, find the right knowledge, and use it. And the role of the advisories there is also to support in the whole process when that is being done. So this is personalized based learning is getting a lot more focus now because of our understanding that each and every student learn in a different way. They have their own strengths and weaknesses, and the technology now enables us to do it without much of an issue. So the next one, the game-based learning, whereas as we was talking about play-based learning in the earlier part, so this is where the idea of gaming principles using the logic, using science to build the interest in the students becomes important. So we have several benefits of doing this. That is, it makes the class more interesting, and it increases the memory capacity, and it also helps by playing the games in the computer. It also helps the students have computer and simulation usage. So in the future, like everybody is going to pretty much use the computer, and even smartphones, any electronic devices. So by helping or by enabling these students to use this, particularly young students, use this often, it helps in having them getting used to the computer usage, keyboard usage, or even the smartphone, and the hand-eye coordination. It also helps, the gamification also helps in building skills, particularly when you build a particular strategy into the games. So we have several gaming platforms which has picked up interest in the recent times, such as Gimit, Kahoot, Socrative, and two examples which I can pretty much right away give is something called a Third World Farmer. And this is a game where one learns to grow or cultivate crops in the arid regions in Sahara. So the idea here is to come up with strategies to enable that. And the student has to think for themselves and see how well they can do this particular activity when tips are given. And it also exposes the conditions of particularly the third world countries to people in the developed countries. So it builds interest by the platform, by using the platform, gaming platform. And similarly, we have Creativity Express, which is basically for K1 to K12 students, focusing on developing the art, and it guides one to use their creative imagination. The next one is about holographic teaching. This is an interesting piece of technology which has come up in very recent times, last 3-4 years, and it's being used in several classrooms where you project an image or even animation or a storyline onto the stage and enable students to learn through that holographic images. So you could enact a historical event, which probably happened like 700 years. That's an example. 600, 700 years ago. Till this point, one had learned it theoretically in the books alone. But now, with the idea that one can visualize it and see exactly what happened through these holographic projections, it activates the students, and it helps them remember things faster when they do that, and brings in their interest on that particular piece of subject or education. So the key benefit of this is one can connect geographically remote classrooms and still be able to deliver lectures. And you can also have a teacher remotely projected, a holographic image of the teacher remotely projected in a different room. And all mannerisms, which typically is displayed by a person, gets displayed in the holographic images. So you don't feel as though you're learning over a computer remotely. So this is a very interesting piece of idea or technology that can be used for teaching, and it is most likely to get popular. And the final category is AI-enabled learning. So the artificial intelligence, it makes it possible for machines to learn from experiences. And it helps it adjust. By learning through experience, the machine feeds back onto itself and adjusts its input, and it starts performing human-like tasks. So here, with artificial intelligence and particularly deep learning, the two technologies that come in, it has expedited the way online teaching or the way remote teaching happens. So we have a computing power which has drastically, exponentially increased in the last 10 years. And that has enabled data gathering, particularly video data gathering and analytics. So data mining and analytics pace have increased so much that a computer can recognize a face in less than a second. And it improves upon itself by correcting its errors. So this is what we call as deep learning. And this has pushed the computer itself to correct and promote education with a better security. And the key benefits of this is it enables smart learning content creation. So you can use the AI algorithms to create the contents by itself, with humans not having to create any content anymore without any grammatical issues. And you can also have tutoring systems like flashcards being created by AI using smart guides, which can be tailored or personalized to the students. And you can have virtual facilitators and learning environment where right now you have the gesture generation or recognition technology also. So the machines can understand the mood and accordingly adjust how it teaches and based on behavior. And finally, the content analytics, where it enables the educators not to just create contents and manage it, but gain insight about how the learning happens, to what extent, who has progressed to how much. For example, a student can take a test online, and that student might have performed poorly in one section alone. So using AI, that could be pinpointed, and again, the tests can be given in only that area automatically. When the student takes the test next time, the focus of the questions can be on the areas that the student has performed poorly. He or she could be taught that, and then that could be used again for improving their overall performance. So even though things have developed, one of the key issues which have been a problem or a challenge in education is proctoring. So traditionally, we have a person who monitors that in a traditional brick and mortar or a traditional school, and tries to identify if someone is cheating or not. And till this point, we were reliant on a particular human member or a person in doing this. But now with remote education coming into place, we have remote test taking, which is becoming more and more popular. And the key issue there, there are four main key issues or challenges which is seen in remote testing to spread all over the world, not just developed countries, but also developing countries. When you look at that, one key problem which is seen, particularly in the third world country, is internet access or connectivity for every or all students. That is a major challenge. That's slowly improving, but still it's a major challenge. And the second one is question paper generation. So in a traditional or a blended learning, we have a particular time a test can be taken. So a set of questions, which is same for all the students, were prepared or is being prepared, and the students take the test based on that. Since it is set within a particular time frame, as long as you have somebody monitoring it, somebody there to monitor it, it was feasible to ensure that there was no cheating, which happens. But with remote testing, that has been a challenge. And then similarly, seamless communication with the remote candidates on their queries or doubts. And the final one being the security, being the key issue, where how do you prevent IP hacking and somebody getting into the computer and remotely, somebody who is not who he or she claims to be, and then taking the test instead of the other person, or even protecting the privacy of the students. There's a lot of private information which we share online. So how do you protect them? So these are some of the challenges which has happened. And a key concept that has come into play recently is called the remote proctoring. So with remote proctoring means that someone is monitoring remotely or how the student takes the test, and is the student the person whom he or she claims to be. The identity verification happens, and it typically is monitored through the video. And offline proctored tests or online proctoring online tests without any proctoring has the following issues. The key ones are because we are all distributed, the students are all distributed in different locations of the world, it becomes difficult for one to travel to a particular location to take the test, which is to be monitored. So we switched to online tests, but the issues there is again with respect to security. How do we monitor that? And another key issue is limited number of test centers which are closer to the students who are located in the remote locations. So you have a university or an educational center, maybe in India, in China, maybe in Africa. But the students could be from any part of the world, apart from the local areas. So how do we monitor the progress? How do we monitor the test taking in such an environment? So that is a key challenge or the issue with the remote proctor. So, but recently, there has been technologies which have helped, particularly the AI technology, with the underlying basis of facial recognition, biometrics, data analytics, machine learning, and deep learning, which has helped proctoring be more successful, remote proctoring be more successful. So remote proctoring can be broadly classified into three different types. One is we have a live online proctoring, where somebody is monitoring through a camera on the person who's taking the test and checking their IDs or looking out for odd behaviors, and then correlating it with whether they are cheating or not. And recorded proctoring is automatically through the camera. The person who's taking the test is recorded, and the behavior there is checked offline to see if there has been any issue or not. But more advanced in the recent times, particularly with the development of facial recognitions and data analytics, deep learning, so we have the technology where the computer can automatically trace the behavior, check for IDs, and do the proctoring and raise alarm or even stop the test as soon as it finds that there is something fishy which is happening. And some of the tools which helps in remote proctoring are like Mercer, ProctorU, Examity, AllProctor. So some of these schools might be already, or educational institutions might be already using these. And the key growth factor for this is the demand for remote learning, e-learning. And you don't have to have any more centers for taking the test. One can be in their own location or home and take the test, and it saves time for both the learner and also saves the money. And finally, the process for remote proctoring is we have someone log into the learning management system and then launch the test application, and then identification is verified automatically or through any of the mechanisms which I mentioned earlier, through facial recognitions or ID card check online or fingerprinting. And finally, once the test is done, automatic report generation. Nowadays, you also have immediate result provision, which is available. So reports are generated both for the students and for the educators or the learners. So overall, with the technology, we see that education is bound to change, and it's a faster pace now because, as we saw earlier, in the recent last few months, we have the society has been driven into a situation because of COVID-19 that remote working, remote education becomes a key. And this has also created an opportunity for change of mindset, which is going to push forth this learning, remote learning in the near future. And with also the technology making remote proctoring more efficient and more cost worthy, this will enforce remote learning to be more effective and promoted. Thank you. Sayeta. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for joining, and this brings me to the end of the presentation. So hand it back to the organizer. Thank you.
Good afternoon to one and all present here. On behalf of the college, I take the privilege of proposing the vote of thanks. I take this opportunity to thank all the people who have contributed wholeheartedly to make this occasion look effortlessly valuable. We express our sincere gratitude to our Honorable Speaker of the day, Mr. Rupesh Kumar, who, amidst his busy schedule, has accepted our invite and meticulously ignited us all by his intellect. We also thank our management and principal for constant support and guidance. I would also like to thank all the staff for their efforts and cooperation in ensuring the smooth conduct of the event. It doesn't matter whatever the situation is, what we learn and what we share matters the most, and that happened here. Once again, I thank you all for your presence and support. Thank you.